So, when did counseling stop being about problem solving? Well, not anymore. Introducing solution-focused counseling with the Unlicensed Counselor. And now, here's your host, Steve Moak.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Unlicensed Counselor. My name is Steve Moak. I am The Unlicensed Counselor. And as always, so grateful to be here on a beautiful, sunny Scottsdale, Arizona day. So excited and feeling especially gratefuler today as I've just got an amazing team here in studio. And I'm actually going to be moving studios to another studio, same great show, same great podcast, different background is pretty much all you're going to notice. But you know, what you don't see, everybody that listens to this, is the team behind this and Robin and Daniel and the outstanding work that they took this fledgling podcaster basically a year ago today when we had absolutely zero listeners and have now grown to thousands that are listening to this every single month. Couldn't have done it without them. We just had, I was almost getting emotional before the show started. We should have heated the mics up then and heard some of the good stuff that was coming out. So just I really appreciate the team that's helped me get to where I am. Rob and Daniel, thank you. It means a lot. You guys are really the best. And again, never know what the future holds, and maybe we can circle back around here. I see you waving in there, Daniel. Thanks, buddy. Just don't forget to hit the record button on the video today. Yeah, I said that during the episode. Hey, fun episode today. Had a little thought that I wanted to do for the next 4 episodes. So I think tomorrow, today is what, February 29th? Was that leap day, leap year, whatever that means? And we're getting ready to roll into March. You know, that means March Madness, college basketball. That means gambling. So I want to get into a little bit some of the vices. So I think for the next month, I want to take every week and kind of mow down some of the vices that exist out there in the world, talk about them, bring them out in the air. I know a lot of guys listen to this podcast too. Gambling is a big thing out in the world. I mean, you can't watch a show, a commercial, a podcast, anything without an advertising for a gambling app or anything like that. Actually, I just went to a restaurant here in Scottsdale right next to the TPC golf course. They have a sports book in the place at DraftKings or something now. So it's a new world out there. You know, gambling is all right. It can be fun. It can be dangerous for those of us that maybe have a little bit of the addiction thing in them as well, too. So let's talk a little bit about that. But I want to spend the next month, maybe the next 4 weeks, talking about gambling, sex, strip clubs, addictions, other things, vices that maybe, you know, go undiscussed a little bit. And we've talked about drugs and alcohol, so I'll probably skip that for the most part and get to some of the other things that maybe should be talked about, at least so we can be aware of the things that are out there, maybe what to do if you've got a significant loved one kind of dealing with some of this stuff, some tips, thoughts, tricks, strategies, ideas on how to talk to them about and maybe get some help as well, too. But before we dig into the episode today, I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsor for a year now, our friends over at ShareTech. Again, if you need an at-home drug or alcohol screen, go to betterdrugtest.com. You can order that test directly from their website. We'll ship it right to your front door. This is the drug and alcohol screen that the leading treatment centers and outpatient programs recommend when their clients discharge from those facilities and send them home. The reason they do that is because this test cannot be cheated or manipulated, and it gives you the levels of drugs and alcohol. All these tests are performed in a laboratory and then sent a secure report to you. Go to betterdrugtest.com. Pick up your test if you're in the market for this as well. And then again, I always like to plug the nonprofit work that I do for the Coalition for Youth Drug Abuse Prevention. Go to thestopstartshere.org. Give us a follow on some of the socials. We are putting out some edgy, bold, compelling content only around youth drug abuse prevention. Our whole goal is to focus on social media and make sure we saturate the market so your kids are seeing the reasons why they need to never start. So go to thestopstartshere.org. And then again, shameless plug for the Unlicensed Counselor as well, too. I think, what are we up to? I think 9 or 10 people. I don't know if we got any more followers on YouTube last week, but hey, you know, it's a slow journey over on the YouTube. We're starting to put up more and more content over there. Just give us a follow, a subscribe, all that good stuff. And you can always follow me on some of the other standard social channels as well. So, I got a little shook up before the show started here. We just had a little love-in. I wasn't expecting that. Just, you know, it's really nice to be surrounded by great people who really are passionate and help you with what you do. And man, it was unexpected as I walked in the door today. But back to the topic at hand. So, you know, gambling is an interesting thing, right? You know, I remember a point in time in my life when I would come home drunk from the bars, I'd be out late, or maybe I was still partying or doing some blow or something like that, and I'd hop online and start doing the online offshore poker stuff or placing sports bet. This is 10 years ago when this stuff was still very illegal, all offshore and things like that. You know, I could see where it dovetailed right into my drug and alcohol addiction. It kind of hit on those same things, and it gave me that rush, that feeling. And now with the proliferation of legalized gambling everywhere, I think we just need to take a second and pause and start talking about these things and a little more openly about some of the problems associated with this. And look, these are behavioral, these are financial, these are psychological, and these are social problems. And I want to give you a rundown of kind of some of those examples under each of those areas as well, too. Because look, you know, I've been in the rooms of AA, NACA, all of the recovery rooms. I've never been into the rooms of GA, but I have met some friends and had some friends that actually they were professional poker players, and I got to know some of their friends group as well. And I'm not slighting the professional poker world. There's a lot of neat, interesting people. But what I did see in a lot of those folks was a lot of the problem gamblers. The term degenerate gets thrown around. You know, I think that almost can do a little bit of harm because I think people feel like you have to be a degenerate in order to have a gambling problem. And I really don't think that's the case. I think that you can have, you know, a gambling problem, if not an addiction, and still kind of float above that degenerate line as well, too. So today I want to bring this topic a little more out into the open because I think this could be that tsunami that's building way offshore, right? That we don't really see coming, but that as more maybe younger people are getting into it. I know a lot of college students. I go to the gym and I see these guys, and the first thing they're doing is checking their games or putting in their parlays. You know, there's a lot of nomenclature associated with gambling as well, too. If you're not familiar, you may want to get a little more familiar with that. So if you hear some of these things getting thrown around, you may be like, oh, I didn't know my husband or boyfriend or aunt, uncle, cousin, son is kind of, you know, into that world so deep. So, you know, the first thing I want to talk about is maybe some behavioral issues around gambling, right? And just some of this around what problem gambling could look like. And the first and foremost, maybe the most easy one to recognize is kind of that loss of control, right? The inability to limit money or time spent on gambling. For example, a person may intend to gamble for an hour but ends up spending the entire day at a casino, right? Again, I'm thinking of people in my life that I know have kind of checked some of these boxes as well, too. And you got to be able to look at somebody and understand and separate them between maybe just a problem, you know, or it's like borderline. It's the same thing with alcoholics. It's like there's some people that can drink right up to that line, but then when there's an issue, they're able to kind of pull back, right? My first ex-wife, you know, we could party, right? And she could sit down, but whenever it would get to that point, she was able to step back. And for me, that's when I just throttle it all the way forward and keep going. The same thing kind of applies, I think, when it comes to this, right? There's some people that can kind of push it, but know that it's like, oh, that I've lost too much, or I'm chasing it now, and recognize it and understand that. If you set a limit right there and you go out and say, I'm only going to go here for a couple hours, and maybe I'm just going to play a little blackjack or play in a poker tournament, and all of a sudden it's 3 a.m. and your wife's sent you 17 text messages wondering where you are and your kids are at, could be an example that you've maybe lost a little bit of control around kind of your gambling. The second thing on the behavioral issue is kind of that preoccupation with gambling as well, too. So constantly thinking about gambling, such as reliving the past gambling experience or planning your next gambling outing. You might talk about the bets or the odds or the wins or the losses. So it's just that it's that kind of fascination with it where it just kind of takes over your world, right? Again, I look at a lot of similarities between drugs and alcohol as well, too. So, you know, if you're more familiar with that, just kind of replace drugs or alcohol with gambling. You're going to see a lot of the similarities. But if you have that person where they're constantly telling you, like, oh, I gotta hit that over, or I need, you know, such and such player to hit 137 yards so I can get that, you know, things like that where you're constantly focused on it, or they're checking the app all the time to see what the odds are, or looking at the scores to make sure that they're doing, or maybe they're at an event and can't put the phone down because they're trying to watch the game or check an update of the score. things like that. These, again, could be some behavioral issues around potentially problem gambling. The next one, it should be pretty common, but it's chasing losses, right? So trying to win money back through more gambling, right? So you lose $100 and now you want to break even. So you kind of push it up a little bit more. And then maybe you lose that one and you want to push it up. So you're constantly trying to get back just to even now. And now let's see, you're just spiraling over the course of that day. I've seen this a lot in college football. Right, I have some buddies who, I don't know if they're problem gamblers or not. I don't know, I just don't know. But I've certainly seen all of a sudden, if you're betting on the Hawaii game because they're 3 hours later and that's the end of the day, and all of a sudden you've got $1,500 because you're down $1,000 over the course of the 10 football games that you've already bet on over the course of the day, and you're chasing that. It's always the Hawaii game because, again, if they're playing at home, they're 3 hours out, so it's going to be that last game of the day. So if all of a sudden you see you're placing bets on things that, I'm sure they're a great football program and team. I think they're the Rainbows or something like that. But if you got a lot of action on them all of a sudden, I'm just telling you, I've seen this firsthand. You're chasing that thing, right? You're chasing that thing. And this doesn't just have to be on sports betting. This could be at the blackjack table as well, too, or the roulette table where it's 50, it's 100, it's 500. Everybody thinks they've got a strategy or an edge or they've got the inside or this. Look, it sounds cliche, but these places weren't built on, the casinos losing a bunch of money, right? We all know that. But at what point do we accept that and then apply it to ourselves? We always think that it's somebody else, that we've got an edge, or I pay this guy for his insider tips and things like that. Which, a quick side note, if you're ever paying some of these insider tip guys, I've never seen a more, scandalous kind of just kind of people out there in the world where they're trying to sell you picks and they're wrong half the time. They take all this credit. They glamorize the $1 million bet that they win, but they're certainly not telling you, the $10 million that they already lost along the way. So just take all that stuff with a grain of salt, right? These experts and their picks and their lock of the day and this, and these are shows that are on ESPN and stuff like that. Now, it used to be kind of taboo to talk about a pick or a line, and there'd be these little cues on ABC of like, the weather or the cover, or they'd say little things along the way to kind of give you these hints around things. Just be super careful around this. It used to be kind of not nice to talk about. Now it's everywhere, right? There's sports shows on ESPN, there's radio shows, there's podcasts galore on all these gambling topics. Look, the best of these people are like 50%. That's the best, so how accurate can they really, truly be? Next up on the kind of gambling side, let's talk about, obviously, the financial problems that can come up from this as well, too. And number one is debt accumulation. So gambling on a credit card, borrowing money to gamble can lead to significant debt. A person might max out their credit card or credit cards or take out loans that they can't afford to repay, right? Or maybe they're going to that guy at the sports bar who's taking action without actually having to shell out some money there. That can lead you into some serious places. That loan shark or those bookies or whatever. You can get in with the wrong crowd pretty quickly. But look, you might be having a problem if all of a sudden your credit card is maxed out and it's all going to DraftKings, right? So if you have a significant other that you think may have a problem with this, I'd keep a close eye on those credit card statements and see exactly what's going where. And I'd make sure you know every credit card they have available or ATM card they have available too, right? Because it's very easy to kind of sneak this stuff in and kind of keep it under the radar. And all of a sudden, you come home and they've taken out, a mortgage, a second mortgage on the house that you didn't know about, and they're losing it. And now you've got the house is gone, the kids' tuition's gone, all these types of things. And I've seen many people get blindsided, happily married couples, because all of a sudden their husband had some gambling addiction that they just were completely unaware of. So I do think you really do need to keep an eye on this. And if you got that inkling, I'd explore it with your significant other a little bit closer. Next up on the potential problems is that financial desperation, right? If all of a sudden they need some quick money to solve a financial problem created by gambling. So this could lead to illegal activities, theft, fraud, all kinds of things. If all of a sudden they need some quick cash to kind of pay off that bookie, that loan shark, that guy at the sports bar, that guy at the casino that maybe just fronted them a couple bucks, right? You're going to run into some financial desperation real quickly. And look, these things are so volatile. I mean, I am blown away as someone. I'm not against gambling. I'm against people who have gambling problems and allowing them to continue to gamble, right? Putting a little bet here and there, but it is unbelievable how accurate the people who make these lines, who set these overs and unders and point spreads and things like that, and little innocuous things such as a layup at the end of the game, or somebody hits a half-court shot, or they fumble and it goes the other way, can shift millions of dollars in wagers. And not only is the financial aspect, but I've seen it ruin people's days, weeks, moods, attitudes. They want to come home. Now they're grumpy and angry and things like that. Is it worth all that? And if their mood is getting swung like that because of some innocuous little thing, I'd be going, man, what's going on here? That seems like a little bit overreaction to something. They just turned the ball over at the end of the game, or the guy hit a three-pointer that didn't mean anything in the game, but meant something big in terms of the point spread, right? So just keep an eye on stuff like that. If you're seeing reactions that are coming out of this that just don't seem appropriate. And then next on the financial problems is the resource misallocation, right? This is a sneaky one, right? So you're using money intended for essential expenses like rent, utilities, education on gambling activities, right? So maybe the guy, quote unquote, pays the bills or handles the bills around the house. But if this guy has a secret gambling addiction that you're just not aware of, that tuition for school, right? That those bills to keep that light on, or paying off that credit card, or that card that you just were supposed to get fixed. That game went to go, bet on, Ohio State in the over last weekend and it missed, right? So now you're short $5K or something like that. It is ugly. It is ugly. It is ugly. But I'm telling you, it's real easy to kind of say, you know what? I feel good about this one, and kind of slip that little bet in over here, and all of a sudden you're digging yourself a deeper hole, right? A deeper hole. So the next topic I want to hit on is the psychological concerns over this. So that's stress and anxiety, right? A lot of times you'll hear this called the sweat, right? People like to have the sweat. They like the action, right? They want to sweat it out. So, in sports betting, you get the duration of the game, so you kind of have that, quote unquote, fun stuff that's going on. But worrying about, those losses or how to obtain more money for gambling can cause significant stress. I mean, this is stuff that can really weigh on you. And oftentimes, you're going to go to desperate lengths now, just like a drug or alcohol addiction, to find more money. You're going to be borrowing it from people. When I was friends with some of these poker players, I was amazed at, these people would win, $150,000 in a tournament. They'd be borrowing money a month later. And it's like, well, where does it go? It's just like they gamble, whether it's poker, or it's cards, or whatever it is. That's the world that they were living in. Again, I'm not saying all poker pros are like this, but when I was exposed to it, I was just like, it was just so much money borrowing, going back and forth and fronting and this and that. And it was just like, oh man, is that really the life that you want to lead? That stress and the anxiety over all of this stuff? That's how you want? It just doesn't seem worth it to me. And then there's depression, right? So when you lose, and you will lose, right? The despair from losing, especially significant amounts of money, can lead to the feelings of hopelessness and depression, right? Look, I've been drunk at a casino and chased a couple bets before, right? And when you lose those bets, it sucks. I mean, you may not realize it in the midst of a 3 a.m. stupor at the Atlantis down in the Bahamas or something like that, and then you wake up the next morning and you're like, wait a second, I lost $1,500 last night on that? Yeah, Steve, you were betting red or black on roulette at $500 a hand, and you lost 3 in a row. Son of a, are you sick? And then you kind of play it off like, ha ha ha, and you're like, dude, that was the money I had for the whole trip planned. What am I going to do here? That can really weigh on you, and weigh on you quickly. And that was me as a single guy. Now imagine doing that, and your finances were already taxed, and you got a wife, and kids and bills and mortgage and what da. And this dovetails right into my next point. It can lead to suicidal thoughts, right? When that stuff starts mounting and mounting and mounting and it compounds and there's interest involved in this, whether you're doing it legally through credit cards or through the loan shark, the bookie, in extreme cases, the overwhelming stress and depression from gambling losses can lead to suicidal ideation, right? That's not saying completed. That's just the ideation of like, I'm so damn far in over my head now. What am I going to do? My wife may kill me because I've lost everything. Like I've maxed out credit cards. I've got $100,000 in losses. She doesn't even know about this yet. I've got a second mortgage on the home that she doesn't even know about right now. What the hell am I going to do? And people will often start to spiral into that dark a place, right? I mean, that is a realistic side effect of problem gambling, serious problem gambling. And for everybody, it doesn't have to be six-figure losses that can get you there. It can be much less than that, right? And that's serious. And you get to that dark a place, and we're going to talk about what to do and how to stop here in a second. But the last thread on this is really just the social problems as well, too. So that relationship strain, right? So lying to your spouse, your family, your friends about the gambling activities and losses, that can erode trust and strain relationships. Guys love to talk about their wins. You never hear about their losses, right? You never hear about their losses. So every time you hear someone bragging about that $36,000 hit that they had on that 17 parlay, okay, great. Oh, man, what a rush. That's cool. They're not telling you about the $50,000 that they spent to get to that point, right? So take all that stuff with a grain of salt and then understand that, what they're probably telling you is the tip of the iceberg. No one's fully disclosing the amount that they lost on that, right? And then how much they lost when they went to the casino last time, and that lying that comes along with this is so ugly. It's so ugly because you got to hide it. How can you be truthful about all the money that you're losing and all the things and maybe all the time that you're sneaking away? Maybe you said you were going to the store and you shot over to the casino. Right? I mean, we got casinos all around town here in Phoenix and Scottsdale. It's easy. You can sneak over there for an hour, drop a quick grand. Nobody ever know, right? Nobody ever know. If nobody else is checking the credit card statements or the bank account, how would anybody ever know? You lie about what you did or something like that, right? It's going to also lead to workplace issues, right? So that preoccupation with gambling can lead to decreased productivity, absenteeism, and job loss, right? Again, if you're maybe at the lunch break, you get your lunch, quote unquote, over at the casino. And now you can sneak in a few hands or something like that. And, I always find with like the problem gamblers too, not that you can be good at gambling, I think, because it's just purely luck. I mean, some of the poker stuff, maybe you can have a slight edge or something like that. But they're always the worst gamblers too. Like they're just consistent losers, it feels like, as well too. And I'm just going to say that, I mean, because that you are. You know that nobody ever comes out of this thing like, shoot, I made $5 million last year. I think I'm going to retire. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way, right? So, and I see these shows that talk about, getting the edge on the casino and stuff like that. It's BS, right? That's entertainment value type stuff, right? And then last thing on the social problems is just the isolation that comes along with this as well too, right? So you're withdrawing from your family and friends and the usual activities to hide the extent of your gambling problem. That hiding, that deception, that lying, that obfuscating, that, blaming that loss or that money on something else, right? People may think you have a drinking or drug problem when really it's kind of a gambling problem as well too. And maybe a good thing to do is if your husband or wife, and by the way, I'm talking kind of a lot about guys in here. Let's not exclude the females as part of this as well, too. I think that's probably a faster growing population that are going to be picking up some of the sports betting apps and things like that as well, too. And that's not to mention the online casinos, the roulettes, the blackjacks. I personally, to me, that should almost just be a red flag of a gambling problem. If you just have to go through a computer, it just feels so generic and fake and rigged. And it's like, really? Are you ever going to win sitting on your phone or laptop playing that? Come on. Come on. That just, it should almost be a red flag that if you're doing that, you already have a problem. Because at least at the casino, you get the high, the low, the dealer, the high five, the friends, you get a free cocktail out of it. You get some of the, the atmosphere that goes along with it. You're sitting at home saying hit and splitting nines and all that kind of stuff That's a problem. That's a problem to me. I was going to say that. Come at me if you want, but I just think it is. But just the isolation that comes along with all this stuff, man, is it worth it? Is it worth it? You're going to be able to look at your son or daughter and be like, I'm sorry, I wanted to get you that car or go send you to private school, but daddy lost $10K on the Niners in the Super Bowl last weekend, right? Think about that. Play that thing forward, right? And think about what that would look like if you lose that money and the feeling that you're going to have with that as well, too. Okay. So now we've talked about problem gambling. I think we all have a pretty good idea of what that looks like. But what to do and how to stop, right? Just like with any addiction problem, there are ways to kind of, get some help around this thing too. And the first step, again, just like drugs and alcohol, acknowledgement, right? The first step is acknowledging that there's a problem and recognizing the harmful impacts of gambling. It's crucial. Step number one, you've got to be able to go, okay, what I'm doing is not normal. It's not healthy. I'm consumed with it. It's becoming a problem. I can see that it's becoming a problem. And by the way, if you're starting to see it, there's a good chance other people are starting to see that as well too. And being able to come to your significant other or counselor or friend or therapist or clergy or whoever and be like, look, I think I need some help with this gambling. I think I'm starting to become a problem. And hopefully you can say it's starting to become, not I'm $100,000 into debt and I've got loan sharks calling at me, threatening to break my legs or worse and things like that, right? And now number two would be seek support. So reach out to your families, your friends, or professionals. I really do think professionals. I don't think a lot of people understand, drinking and drug support and addiction because a lot of us have that. I think gambling still kind of flies under the radar of things that maybe not all of us. Like when I talk about being in recovery, like people are like, oh, my brother, my sister, me, everybody knows somebody. Gambling, I'm like, I'm not sure everybody kind of knows that. Hopefully you've heard of Gamblers Anonymous. That's a great way to go. But I encourage people to kind of at least seek some professional help, right? Talk to a friend, but let's get to some professional help. Because this is stuff that can just wipe families out. I mean, it can wipe, drug and alcohol addiction. Yes, it can, but typically it takes you down. Gambling can take out money quickly, and you're not getting all that back, right? So, obviously Gamblers Anonymous, it's a great free community resource, but highly encourage folks to kind of get into some counseling and get that professional help. I mean, because when you get into the professional help, you're going to have therapy. There's CBT, that's cognitive behavioral help therapy, which can help address some of the thought patterns kind of associated with gambling. So I think it's important to kind of seek professional help for this one. I mean, I really do. And I don't just say that lightly, but it's like, if you got gambling, let's get somebody quickly. I also think, maybe some financial counseling. So get advice on managing debts and financial planning from a professional. This can be crucial for recovery because let's face it, you usually don't come in to help if you're winning, right? So you're probably a crap ton in debt and now you got to find a way to get out of it, right? So you need to get some financial counseling and get in there with your husband, your wife, your spouse, family, whatever it is. Let's make some plans to chip away at this thing so we can start to put it to bed. And let's maybe get the credit cards and debit cards out of your hand as well too, right? This one is pretty cool that a lot of the apps do use, is the self-exclusion, right? So many gaming establishments and online sites allow you to self-exclude, right, which can prevent access to gambling opportunities. One of the cooler things that I've seen, that actually, because that hurts their business, to take problem gamblers out, they probably pump a lot of money into these things. But you can self-exclude. Does that mean that they couldn't potentially circumvent in other ways and get back in? Yeah, but I think it's a great thing to do is to kind of self-exclude and kind of say, raise your hand, I need to take myself out. Don't let me into this site. I'm not allowed. And they'll lock you out. I've seen this happen before where people are like, I got a problem. And look, you all see the commercials, which I think, in fact, there was an SNL skit this weekend with Shane Gillis. I don't know if anybody watches, one of my favorite stand-ups out there right now. They did, it was a spoof on a gambling site. It was like, rock bottom gamblers. It's like bet on how your friend's going to hit rock bottom. It was really a funny sketch. But, it's sad in the fact that it's such in the zeitgeist now in the world that they're actually able to spoof this on SNL. But there are 800 numbers that always pop up on those things. You can call in, you can get help, you can self-exclude yourself from this website. And then you can also find alternatives as well, too. So you can engage in non-gambling activities and hobbies that can fill the void left by gambling. So activities that offer fulfillment and excitement can be healthy alternatives. I'll put one other thing on this. You might need to take a little break from watching some sports as well, too. I mean, just to go easy on yourself. Just like when I got sober, I stopped hanging out at bars. I know sports and everything are pretty common and ubiquitous, but maybe just take a little break. Give yourself a little bit of time to kind of get your feet under yourself, start to, kind of level set a little bit. So maybe not hanging out in the bars or the sports books or turning the game on and all that kind of stuff. Give yourself a little breathing room to kind of do this. And then number 7, I'll say this, but I don't really like it, is the setting limits. If you can't quit outright, setting some strict time and money limits that can help manage through the problem. If you got a problem, you got a problem. This, to me, is the same as kind of harm reduction. It's like, just smoke a little less crack. No, if you're doing that, I think you got a problem. And if you have to set some limits, to me, you're already setting you have a problem. Look, if this is your baby step in towards of maybe proving to yourself you have a problem with gambling, I'll accept that. But, if you're having to set limits, to me, you've already got a problem, right? Last but not least, on the technology side, use software apps that blocks access to the gambling websites. Take the apps off your phone. Track your spending. Have your wife or husband or significant other help hold you accountable as you're going through this part, right? Recovery from problem gambling is challenging, right? It requires commitment, support, and changes in lifestyles and thinking patterns. It's crucial to address both the behavior itself and the underlying issues that may drive the gambling. Look, I take this one very seriously, and I've just seen friends struggle with this, right? And not all of the people I know have gone to the great depths. But there's a lot of even former professional athletes who have some tremendous stories that became gamblers, and that's when they started, helping fix games or getting inside tips from the refs. I mean, this stuff goes deep, and it can really, really tear apart families and really ruin entire families as well, too. So, like I said, I'm going to take the next month to get into some of these different topics, some of the vices that exist. I'm not out here to rain on your March Madness bracket. I'm going to fill out a bracket or two. If you don't have a problem, go fill out a bracket or two and have some fun with it. Just recognize what the signs look like when someone starts to go down the problem path with gambling as well, too. So, hope you took some good stuff out of this and learned a little thing or two. And as I sign off from this studio one last time, I want to say again, thanks to Robin and Daniel for all the great times. Really look forward to hopefully working with you guys again. My name is Steve Moak. Until next time, thank you very much.